Hello and welcome to Monday's edition of the Kings of Anglia Ipswich Town podcast. My name is Andy Boren, and on this fine Monday morning, I'm joined by two boys, two kings, two of the best men, Stuart Watson and Ross Halls. Ross, we're going to start with you because you've just shown me something on the camera here, which you shouldn't have shown me, and I want you to hold it up to the camera again. People will be watching this and can see it. I'll describe it once it's held up. Get it held up. You're looking reluctant, but you can't show me something as.
Well, the fun fact behind this, of course, we all asked after the Buxton game. You did your Andy and Stu react, and I think was used to sort of saying, "What's your favourite animal?" And everyone was talking about their animals, and I came and said giraffes, long necks and all that, and yeah. And of course, right now, every family member just buys us giraffe ornaments or whatever. But I decided to get my girlfriend a nice little gift of me on a giraffe. With
Look at that.
So video watchers will be very aware of what they're seeing, and probably won't unsee this. If you're listening on audio, what you're missing is a giraffe cushion with its stomach cut out and replaced by a very surprised and slightly warped looking, on both sides, version of Ross's face. It's stretched itself. Your eyes are not that far apart in real life.
no,
That's highly
Please
unusual.
put it away. That's enough.
That's also just a peek behind the curtain at the laughs we have once the cameras stop rolling at Portman Road after games. Yeah, we do go into big issues like what's your favourite animal? So that's just where we're at. Stu, what's your favourite animal?
Eagle.
Have you got a cushion?
I have not got a cushion, no. But I enjoyed your spirit animal. I think it's very, very fitting.
I like penguins. I like penguin. I like swimming. I like being cold. I like being a little bit oily as well. Which penguins?
Okay.
Penguin, because when they come out of the water, they look a little bit. You get a bit salty they look a bit crispy sometimes. Feathers aren't always perfect. That's fine. I'm not always perfect with my hair. Does what it wants. Their feathers do what they want. I like penguins. But there we are. That wasn't how I planned on starting this podcast, but seeing that cushion meant it needed to be discussed. And we were discussing our favourite animals after Ipswich Town's 4-0 FA Cup victory over Buxton last night. Stu, you're doing the exact same thing as me. You're glancing at the World Cup, aren't you? While we're watching this, Serbia are currently beating Cameroon 2-1. That's when we're recording this. But let's try and focus on the real business, which is FA Cup and Buxton. What did we make of it, guys? I think ultimately Town did what they needed to do, just as they did at Bracknell. And it's been quite a nice route to round 3 for Ipswich, but jobs still needed to be done on both occasions. So what did we make of this 4-0 home victory over Buxton?
Well, Ipswich are in the hat for the third round, which by the time some of you are listening to this, you'll probably know who Ipswich have got. You're tempted to go, well, it's another box ticked by McKenna and co in terms of past demons being slain. TV curse gone, etc. FA Cup's another thing that's been a monkey on the back for Ipswich Town, but beating Bracknell and Buxton doesn't necessarily mean that's job done. But Ipswich have done what they needed to do against both those teams and find themselves in the hat for round 3. You're right; it's very, very similar to Bracknell. Really, a bit of a spirited fight from for the underdogs to start with, but ultimately Ipswich's greater quality and fitness and athleticism shone through, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, and that's exactly what we were expecting from Town, especially when we saw the team sheet, guys. Because I think I don't think we were expecting Kieran McKenna to go with a particularly young side. That doesn't seem to be the way he wants to go. He's previously spoken about young players sort of rising to occasions better when they're in senior sides. So if we were going to see young players, we kind of thought it would be in a senior team. But I don't know if we were expecting quite the strength of starting 11 that we saw, were we? Like just simply seeing Christian Walton on the team sheet as an example is just shows what Town were planning to do in this one.
Yeah, Christian Walton was the big standout because you think Alaki, doesn't play him that often, and he's more the cup keeper. But McKenna must have just thought, yeah, play Walton for this game. You never know. We were saying before the game, the Bracknell game was David versus Goliath. That was what I was phrasing it as. But you said, Andy, on the boot room, it was basically in Goliath's back garden, this one. But yeah, seeing a very strong lineup, it's always good to see Morsey in the midfield. He played at Bracknell. Wes Burns coming in as well. And, it was a strong lineup. And I like to see that, though, because we've seen in previous FA Cup, Papa John's games, under different managers, they put in a very disjointed team. But now it's sort of a very good, everyone's getting minutes. And that's what I like to see.
Yeah, I quite like it. I think it shows a commitment to winning, I think, over all else. But one of the main things, and McKenna spoke about this after the game about ticking boxes, didn't he, Stu? And a box ticked for him was to start with this side and be able to bring them off, to kind of work it that way rather than needing to send reinforcements on to win games. And that's a slightly different approach to what we're used to as well, isn't it? Going strong and hoping to get the job done.
Yeah, I think 7 of that team started the game at Exeter. A few more of them had come off the bench against Exeter. So this was pretty much a league team. I think we need to also recognise that there's a bit of a needs-must situation on McKenna's hands here as well, in terms of the number of injuries, which we'll probably discuss in a bit more depth in a bit. But there wasn't loads of senior options. But he could have mixed it up a little bit more. He could have started 2 or 3 of those youngsters. He could have had a different goalkeeper in goal, for example, but he didn't. What I like is that McKenna talks about needing to get the right balance, not just in terms of wanting to win the game, but in terms of giving the players that do play the best possible chance to shine. And I've always felt when you see managers make loads of changes for the Cup, it's really unfair on the ones that come in, because you're asking fringe players and kids to suddenly show the best versions of themselves in a team that's completely alien to them. So when he has brought in 1 or 2 youngsters, it's into something that resembles a bit of a fully functioning side, which I think is good for everybody. So a bit of a needs must in terms of the team, but the plan obviously was to get the game won and take people off. And up until half an hour, you're starting to think, could backfire a little bit. He might have to stick with some of these players a bit longer than he might have wanted. But 2 goals in 5 minutes meant it was the game plan worked nicely.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily look like it was going to come, did it? In that half an hour, the game settled into its pattern immediately. I think pretty clear what Buxton were doing: 5 at the back, 4 in front of them, and then one striker left to do an awful lot of running up top. And we know, and Ipswich would have known, that they were going to have so much of the ball to try and work. But we know this happens in League One. We've seen it, but in many ways, this seemed even harder because it felt like Buxton were playing kind of the Cheltenham 70-minute team from minute 1. Like, kind of by the time a League One side has settled right back after the hour mark, I think it's really sniffing that there's something there for them. Buxton did that from the very beginning, and Ipswich had all the time in the world to work the ball up to the final third of the pitch, and then it just became so congested, didn't it? Balls into the box weren't landing where they needed to land. There's been a goal in the World Cup.
Got to interrupt you there, Andy. There's been a goal in the World Cup. Mitrovic, 3-1 to Serbia.
What does it mean for the group, Stu?
No idea.
Doesn't matter. We'll find out later. But balls into the box with Ipswich were coming back. They weren't landing in the right spot. Wes Burns was crossing time and time again, quite often with his left foot, actually, wasn't he? He was cutting back on, putting in standing up some left-footed balls that either didn't reach a target or the first contact wasn't there. Connor Chaplin had a few kind of snuffed out, but there was a point there where it felt like this was going to get to half time without a breakthrough.
Yeah. They'd clearly studied the Lincoln and the Cheltenham games, and those are the blueprints now for so-called lesser sides to come to Ipswich and frustrate. And they did a lot of things really well. Buxton, they were organised, as you say. They headed everything away. They cut out through balls, rode their luck a couple of times. Ipswich's quality let them down a little bit with the final ball at times. Wes Burns had a lot of the ball, was a bit hit and miss with his deliveries into the box. And yeah, half an hour came and we were looking at each other going, it couldn't be one of those frustrating days. I mean, you always felt that wasn't sustainable for 90 minutes. But the bigger question was, would it mess up the game plan of being able to make a couple of changes at half time and some early in the second half? So it was a bit of relief when that first goal went in from Connor Chaplin.
Yeah, and I think it would have been extra because they've already had that happen to them once recently. The Kyle Edwards red card at Cambridge, they had a plan for that game, didn't they, of how to use people and use minutes and stuff. And they saw that one kind of completely ruined by a very early and unjust red card. So you're right. I don't think we ever felt that the game wasn't going to get won by Ipswich, but it might have just pushed things forward half an hour and ruined things a little bit. But a nice goal when it came, Ross, and one that we've kind of seen before from Connor Chaplin. Great to see him back on the score sheet again.
Yeah, is it 12 games?
12 games, yeah.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah, I didn't actually know that until I saw one of your guys' piece and was like, wow, 12 goals. 12 goals can be a long time without a goal, which is a stupid phrase. I'll just ignore that, everybody. But yeah, it's good to see him score. He can score goals like that, as we see. Of course, his second goal again was much better. But yeah, it's good to see players like him. And he mentioned that he scores in purple patches. So yeah, it's good to hit. That's always good for your confidence. And yeah, good finish from Chappers.
Yeah, I thought he played really well in this game. I think you turned to me during the game, Stu, about 20 minutes in and said that if anyone's going to make this happen for Ipswich, it was going to be Chaplin. He was busy. He was. I like how Ipswich were able to find him in the box, despite the fact he's tiny. He's really small. Like, they pick him out in the box. We've seen even from corners, they pick him out with his head. They've managed to get the ball to his feet from corners previously, and he has this habit of finding that little bit of space in the box, doesn't he? And when he does, he can be lethal.
Yeah, that was trademark Connor Chaplin, that first goal from him. And the thing I liked everything about the goal, but the movement, if you watch him, sometimes in football, it's about standing still. And sometimes it's about everyone else kind of gets sucked towards the goal. And if you watch him, he just makes a little half-yard step back to find that space in the box. He tells Wes Burns where he wants it. Obviously, those two are on a good wavelength. And he then lets it run across his body, which is another good skill when he could have thrashed at it first time to open up half the yard. And then it's just a good touch and finish. And that is what Connor Chaplin is about. If you were to say, find me a goal that sums up Connor Chaplin the best, that would be sort of in his sort of highlights reel. So the second goal in his second goal in the second half, it was obviously sort of easier on the eye in terms of a really nice finish into the top corner from outside the box. But I really liked his first goal, actually.
Yeah, that's something. It's something that Ipswich, they just haven't had for many years. Someone reliable from that kind of range. And yeah, he's had a bit of a sticky spell in front of goal, and there have been games where he hasn't contributed quite as much. There's been games where he's not been able to take chances from that position. But if there's one player I want the ball falling to in anywhere from the penalty spot to the edge of the box, it's Connor Chaplin. Trust him. I trust him to score from there, and I trust him to work hard and give Ipswich something in every game, even if he's not on it. So for him to be scoring goals again is a great thing. And Stu, Ross touched on it already. He's talked about being a streaky player who scores in purple patches. So hopefully,
we need one now. Yeah, we need this to be the start of another purple patch, really, with some of the injuries that have been sort of suffered at the top end of the pitch. Harness out for a little while now. I think he got 6 in 6 around sort of August, September time. If you look at his record last season with, what did he end on, 12 goals? They sort of came in little patches if you look back at last season. So he's right. He's always been this kind of streaky goal scorer. And you would hope now that this is the start of another good streak for him, because you look at these next fixtures coming up between now and the start of the new year. I think this is a really important time for Ipswich with the squad under a real bit of stress. That, if Connor Chaplin can come to the table in these next 5 games, Fleetwood at home on Friday night, Peterborough at home the following weekend, Wickham away, Oxford at home on Boxing Day, and then Portsmouth away. This looks like I know every game's important, I know every period's important, but this feels like if Ipswich can just get through these next 5 games in decent shape, that's really important before the January transfer window opens and some cavalry can arrive.
Yeah, and hopefully Chaplin contributes all the way through that. Another player who scored a goal and probably is going to have a significant role to play going forward now that he is back is Ghassan Habme. First start for him finally, November the 27th, after signing on deadline day of the summer transfer window. A fractured foot has set him back massively. But great to see him out there, and even though obviously it was only a kind of a close range finish, which followed a good run into the box, any goal for a striker in a game like that's a good thing, isn't it, Ross? Just to see him kind of back on the pitch and getting the ball in the net.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't easy on the eye, that goal. But I think he was probably very happy to be on the pitch again. You know, he came on against Exeter on Saturday, but and of course he couldn't play on Tuesday because he's cup tied. But good minutes in the tank for him. And I have to admit, ladies and gentlemen, I do love saying Ghassan Hadmi because I can say it and it's easy. It just rolls off the tongue. Ghassan Hadmi.
You can, mate. You've nailed that.
Yeah, happy with that. Because someone actually asked me in the press room, how would you say his name? And I just was like, Ghassan Hadmi, mate. So
much confidence, Ross.
I know.
I like it.
I like it. And hopefully, Ghassan Hadmi's got confidence with his first goal. You know, hopefully, as you said, we need him now to be that man up top, scoring goals and stuff. So, hopefully more to come from him.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity for him, isn't it? Freddie Ladapo not involved in this game, sort of precautionary. It sounds like he felt his calf warming up in the Papa John's Trophy on Tuesday night, so wasn't risked, wasn't involved. But with Tyrese John-Jules out and Caden Jackson doing his best work wide this season, there's a kind of a vacancy for almost like a second support striker here with a month to go before, like you say, Stu, any reinforcements can arrive. So he's going to have a role to play.
He looks like a proper number 9, a central striker to me. I mean, I'm basing that purely on the way he played against Ipswich in that Burton game earlier in the season. I can't say that I've seen a huge amount more of him than that, and the odd cameos that he's had. Probably can't read too much into this performance against Buxton, but he had a header against the post in the second half as well. I just think from the limited amount we know of him, he's a different type of striker. We talk about Ipswich losing some of their specialist options with some of these players like Aluko and Lee and others being out. I think a Hadmi is a different type of option that I think in these type of games against your Cheltenham, Lincoln, those sort of games where teams are sitting deep, he's a better option than Caden Jackson to me, because Caden Jackson is someone that's more suited to an open away game where there's space to run in behind and stretch people on the counter. A Hadmi someone who can just have a bit of contact up against centre halves, ruffle a few feathers, draw some men like a magnet to him that creates space for others, that creates space for Connor Chaplin to lurk near the penalty spot, for example. I definitely think you're talking about that first Chaplin goal, that teams were starting to wise up to the fact that Ipswich's go-to pattern of play is to get to the byline and then pull it back to one of the 10s in space on the penalty spot. So teams were kind of gambling on marking that space. And that's why I quite like the Hadmi goal, actually, a goal bundled in from inside the 6-yard box. Ipswich can't just cut the ball back and score from 12 yards out. I think there's times where they need to sweep the ball into the 6-yard box and just have someone there to tap home from close range and just have that bit of variety in terms of their balls into the box. And hopefully a Hadmi can kind of help with that.
Got to have multiple threats. Both Kieran McKenna and Hadmi himself they've spoken about what he wants to do is get first contact, 6-yard box, do all sorts of things inside the penalty area, which, like you say, that stretches the pitch that little bit more in a different way to Jackson, and can hopefully benefit Ipswich going forward. But that's 2-0, that's half time, and realistically that's game done. And we start to see the changes at the break. So some planned ones with Leif Davis and Cameron Humphreys both coming off. So at that point, I think we're feeling pretty confident that Ipswich have won the game. That's an odd little scoop offside goal there, Stu, that you're watching. That's I wish that had stood. little Cameroon scoop.
He's given it. VAR check, goal.
And look, he's absolutely buzzing. I love the colour. I love the colour of African football. Like the colour, the kits, the flags, the joy. And I'd even forgive the Cameroon manager for wearing a cap.
Cap, suit jacket, dreadlocks. That's Rigobert's song, isn't it?
Yeah, he was great. He was a really good player. I like some of these. Like we're getting to the point now where like World Cup managers are players that I remember watching play, which I'm enjoying. Rigobert's song, and then Aliou Cissé's managing at the World Cup as well, isn't he?
Scooped finish. You don't see a scooped finish very often, do you? Enjoyed that.
No, enjoyed that a lot. My TV's too small to have actually seen that particularly well, but game on. Serbia 3, Cameroon 2. We'll come back to you shortly, correspondent Watson.
Well, like Sky Sports News at the World Cup, like why is anybody watching people just talk about a game when they can watch it live? But
yeah, it's quite bleak. Sky, they're so used to being the big dog, aren't they? Sky Sports with all the footage for everything, all the Premier League footage, can do what they want. Sky Sports News packed with interviews and stuff. But now I was watching this morning, they just were chatting to Rob Earnshaw about the World Cup. Like, that's fine. Rob had some interesting things to say.
It did at least give us the Steve McLaren moment during the Iceland game a few years ago, didn't it? We'd have never had that if it wasn't for Sky Sports News covering these matches.
That Iceland game, I'll always. He's miles offside. This is like a little. This is developing into a watch along now. That's offside, isn't it? It feels like we're doing a watch along. Was that offside? Cameroon have got the ball in the net again, but that looked absolutely miles offside to me. The first through ball. This is a rubbish watch along as well, isn't it? Because we're not going to publish. This isn't going to be.
Because nobody's watching it along.
The game will have finished hours ago.
This isn't live.
It's only live once, and it's not now. Where were we? I was about to tell you about what I was doing during the Iceland game that you were talking about there, but I don't know if I was basically trying to get a live bird out of my house that my cat had brought in. That's what I did while England were being knocked out of those Euros. Or is it going to be offside? Let's roll with this. That looked slightly off to me on my tiny TV. That one's good. The pullback's okay. The suspense.
Silence.
Pray silence, please.
I want to know what bird it was while we wait for the decision on this. Pigeon?
Blackbird.
Did you nurse it back to health over a period of time?
The thing with my cat is that he's not. He just likes to play. He's not vicious. He doesn't really want to be doing this stuff, but I think he's got kind of like cat urges to catch birds and stuff. So he doesn't particularly injure the birds. He just kind of like pats them, stuns them a bit, brings them in, and then loses them. So I was trying to go. I did stand.
It stands 3-3.
3-3. Right. But Buxton. Half time.
Yeah.
We're back in the
We're back to half time.
We're back to half time at Buxton. Town have won this game. Some notes from the second half. We've got 2 goals to talk about. We've spoken about the Chaplin one already. The fourth one was sort of deep in the game. Caden Jackson robs the Buxton captain, declines the opportunity to slide Chaplin away to score a hat-trick, but actually produces a really nice finish himself for the fourth one to complete a victory that I think we were pretty confident was done at half time. But any other notes from the second half?
Luke Wolfenden playing as a makeshift midfielder. Enjoyed that. We had a conversation in the car, didn't we? Maybe on the way to Exeter, where it started to dawn on us that, well, hang on a minute. If Morsey and Humphreys are the only fit sort of senior central midfielders who've got all out for the season, Evans not due back, bless you. Evans not due back until sort of January time, Christmas period. I think they vaguely talked about for him, but it's going to take him a little while, you would imagine, to kind of get fully up to speed. What happens when Sam Morsey gets suspended next? What happens if touch wood, I hope this doesn't happen, but Cameron Humphreys gets an injury or is in danger of sort of being overplayed a little bit. And we were sort of racking our brains as to what Kieran McKenna would do. I'm not convinced that he would suddenly turn to the under-23s, the under-21s, and play a Siziba or Chirewa alongside Cameron Humphreys, for example. I think that would be seen as maybe a bit too inexperienced. So what would he do in terms of makeshift options? And we got an answer last night in Luke Wolfenden being brought on for Sam Morsey and playing the last 20 minutes, half hour as a holding mid.
What do you make of it, Rob? I think Luke. I think if anybody asked Luke, I think he would say he enjoyed himself.
I enjoyed it too. I liked it. He's a ball playing, defender, isn't he? And I think, we're seeing him make some runs before. At Rotherham last season, that massive run where he could have scored. And I'm sure he just likes to be on the ball, and I'm sure he just likes to just go forward with it. So, of course, it's not the answer, but if it's needed, then go for it. And I think this is probably the best game to sort of experiment. We won the game already. A tiring Buxton side, why not try it out with this game?
Yeah, a good game to experiment in. Probably not a good game to judge on, but as an in-game option, I would be staggered if we see Luke Wolfenden start a game as a central midfielder. But as an in-game option, what do we reckon? Because for me personally, I think he's a really important part of the defence in the position that he is naturally playing. So that would bring its own issue of him
it's
not
the
being...
one area of the squad, centre half, where they're actually in good shape in terms of injuries at the moment. Everyone fit now with Burgess back. So you've got Burgess, Edmondson, Keogh, Wolfenden, Denassian, if we include him as part of that unit. So it's the one area that they're in full health with, really. So it kind of makes sense to look to that unit for someone that might have to do a job elsewhere. And I guess Wolfenden is the obvious answer to that. It's one thing him being cool, calm and collected on the ball at centre half. It's maybe another thing in the hurly-burly of midfield where the press is coming at you from a 360-degree angle instead of the game being all in front of you. It's not to say he can't do it, but there might be a bit of a learning curve there for him. And Ipswich don't necessarily want to be doing learning curve stuff in the middle of a very important season at the moment. But, it maybe needs must again at this moment in time. I think we just have to hope that scenario where Morsey or Humphreys aren't available doesn't sort of occur in the next few weeks. And then there'll be a question as to whether Ipswich look to recall either Idris El Mazouni or Raheem Harper or sign a central midfielder, because obviously Panucci Kamara is not someone that we've mentioned, but some bad news after the game in that he obviously started the game against Portsmouth, didn't he? Got through 70 minutes, but McKenna said he didn't feel right during or after that game with the groin injury that he had surgery on after signing from Plymouth. And I think we will have to be honest and say in the cameos that we've seen from him and the start against Portsmouth, he's looked pretty rusty. He's looked far from being sort of bang up to speed so far. And I guess that now makes sense that he's obviously not 100% physically right. So I don't think we can be sort of banking on Panucci Kamara starting games anytime soon, league games.
Yeah, he's been willing, hasn't he? Incredibly willing, playing with a smile. He looks like he's been enjoying himself, but I don't think we've seen the true Panucci Kamara yet, and that is a worry that he was out for 6 months. Remember, he had a long old absence, but you'd have hoped he was maybe a little bit further down the track in being back to himself by this point. And you touched on injuries kind of after this game. To hear that Greg Lee wasn't available, having felt something in his knee, but around the site of the leg fracture that kept him out for a couple of months. That was really disappointing to hear, wasn't it? Because we spoke to Greg on Friday. He seemed in a really good place. Friday lunchtime, saying he's 100%, feeling really good, and must have been something felt on Saturday. But for it to be in the kind of the site of that leg fracture is not great news, is it? And I'm sure it's something they'll tread very carefully with from this point.
I thought we were away from these injury curses. I know I hate to bring the word curse, the Sky curse, the FA Cup curse. We broke them now, but I know injuries are part of the game. But it's every week now. It's just getting out. So every time Stu, yourself speak to McKenna, updates, he goes, "Yeah, got some bad news, boys." And then bombshell. When I saw that piece, 2 players in one press conference. That's just, yeah, it's not great. And we've still got a big month ahead. If it was happening at the end of December, go, okay, the transfer window's open, happy days. But we've got now a big month ahead, and Greg Lee, he's been a big miss. Leif Davis he's looking knackered, and he's a great backup to have, and yeah, it's not good. But wish him all the best.
Well, thankfully, we have to be really thankful at this point that, like a week ago, we would have been we still didn't know whether Leif Davis had suffered some kind of significant issue after he came hobbling off.
I'm worried about that. Andy came off, obviously, 70 odd minutes at Exeter with what looked like a hamstring problem, was then rested for the subsequent game against Portsmouth. He played 45 minutes against Buxton and came off in what you imagine was a pre-planned substitution at half-time. But we were looking at that as being like Ipswich as having probably the best 2 left-sided options as a pair in the whole of the league in Davis and Lee. But Lee's going off for a scan on his knee today. And I do worry that Leif Davis is playing, as I keep saying, this is his first proper full season of men's football week in, week out. And he's such a dynamic player who covers so much yardage, so explosive. The sight of him sort of managing a hamstring injury and now Greg Lee having a bit of a setback, that worries me. If you've got a double whammy in that position there, that would significantly weaken Ipswich. I mean, what's plan C there on the left side if there came a stage where both
Vincent
of those
Young?
were out?
Would it be Vincent Young? But
I guess so. But I think he might be needed further up the pitch as well. There's various holes that Vincent Young's versatility is going to be needed to plug over the coming weeks. But yeah.
If you can talk. I think McKenna was talking about how versatile Vincent Young is and how important that is. But if he suddenly is your starting left back, he's not versatile anymore. He's your left back, and that's what you need him to be. Still Matt Penny waiting in the wings, remember, up at Motherwell, whose loan actually that expires in January. It wouldn't be a recall there. That's up in January. An option. But that, I guess, for that to be made into something, that would require one of the two players there to be out for a significant period. Who was it we were talking about last season? Was it Wes Burns that was dealing with a hamstring injury for certain points of last season, which we were kind of felt like we were monitoring kind of week to week? Because those hamstring injuries don't necessarily go away if there's something.
I think it was Achilles, wasn't it, with Wes Burns? That was sort of a nagging Achilles injury that they talked about kind of being in the background, and we felt that was a sort of a ticking time bomb that might go off, and thankfully it didn't. I mean, that was another heart in mouth moment yesterday, wasn't it, with Wes Burns getting another kick. And he went down, received treatment for a little while. He played on. They hooked him off as a precaution. Not long after that, McKenna says he's fine. But yeah, they could do without any more of these stacking up now. From a squad where we talked about having almost 2 different 11s that could comfortably challenge for a top 6, it's starting to get a little bit stretched now.
Well, this seems like the right point to talk about Marcus Harness as well, then, because we haven't done one of these since news of Marcus's injury was confirmed. That's a bucket handle issue with his meniscus, which I have learned a little bit about what the bucket handle is with his meniscus. By the sounds of things, he had surgery.
I feel like the word meniscus, when like the word metatarsal, no one had really heard of it or used it, and then Rooney did his, and then suddenly you heard about metatarsals every 2 minutes. Meniscus is Ipswich's version of that now.
Well, I don't think human beings had metatarsals until David Beckham broke his, and that is when the human race kind of evolved to have one. Do we need to start putting a picture of someone's meniscus on the front of the newspaper and getting people to touch it? Well, wasn't that what they did with Beckham? The Sun put it on there and like touch this and help it heal. We could put a picture of a meniscus on the front of the East Anglian Daily Times. Do you think they'd go for that?
We'll float it in conference when we next have our news conference.
Interactive, interactive is a big thing now. I don't know if you've seen a new thing on Netflix called the Triviaverse, and that's interactive. So, yeah, I've been testing my trivia. So yeah, it's just on Netflix. There's a thing you can do. You can trivia.
Okay, we'll put that forward as our evidence for why Marcus Harness's knee needs to be put on the front of the newspaper. But that's a blow as well, isn't it? To lose him for at least a month, if not more, almost certainly more. At a time when he'd had such an impact on that Exeter game, hadn't he? He'd made Freddie Ladapo's goal and then scored the header himself. Hopefully, he was on the start of another kind of hot streak. But denied that.
Yeah, with the sort of double number 10 system that McKenna plays, you've now got no Harness, no Aluko, no John Jules, who's gone back to Arsenal, looking at 3 to 4 months for him. That really sort of leaves Connor Chaplin plus players that wouldn't necessarily we'd have put in the kind of number 10 category, but now are probably having to. Kyle Edwards, Caden Jackson, Hadme possibly, but these aren't out and out number 10 creative types. These are players that maybe are going to have to ask to do more of a job in their secondary positions over the coming weeks, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's I think we've talked a lot about Ipswich kind of transitioning from the kind of the back three and the wing backs towards a more of a 4-2-3-1, and I think if they hadn't done that by now, they would have done it because they would have done it now because they don't have two number 10s. Thankfully, they're playing with a wide right and a wide left. So Burns and Edwards, you would figure, are going to have sort of an extended run there. With Caden Jackson's proven that he can play for McKenna on either side. There's a bit of versatility there from him and maybe even Kane Vincent-Young as well. So they've got the cover, but the depth, Ross, not what it was once again. It's the same thing we've talked about before.
Yeah, you think, in the summer, the first few games of the season, we're like, oh, we're going to have to leave out this person. He's not going to be in the match day squad. Now it's like, oh, who's actually going to be available? Now the bench is going to get, very short in terms of going to be a lot of young players. But yeah, it's just a shame, as you said, players who are just coming back into form. Harness had a bit of a patch where he was a bit inconsistent. But yeah, they've really good game against Exeter. And the same like John Jules, he was in great form before his injury. And yeah, these have just come at the wrong time. And unfortunately, the Harness injury happened in the Pizza Trophy game when, Sonny Aluko had that injury as well, earlier in the season in the Pizza Trophy game. So, but I'm pleased McKenna went strong in those competitions, but then you also go, oh, maybe we shouldn't have played them. But injuries can happen, as we said before, like in training, it can happen in training. So, but yeah, the depth isn't as strong as it used to be. But we said before, little violins from League One clubs who, who haven't even got a strong enough bench and even strong enough first 11 to even worry about injuries. So,
yeah, and that's why you have an academy as well.
Yep.
That's that we talked about blocked pathways and things like that before. Well, now opportunity knocks for one or two of these youngsters. Tawanda Chirewa, for example, has been an absolute goal machine for the under 21s. Is seen as a real bright talent. He can play in a variety of those forward positions. He can play in a deeper midfield role, as we saw last night. So I don't see him starting a league game anytime soon, but he may start getting on the bench a few times, and he may come on and may have his moment. And sometimes fate works that way, that the door will open for somebody else. So far from panic stations or disaster situations at the moment, but I remember us having conversations about, is this squad a bit too big? Is it a bit too bloated? It's difficult trying to keep everybody happy. And this is why Ipswich kind of built the squad that they did to kind of future-proof themselves for these winter months and for these injuries, which we knew were coming, but not necessarily at this sort of quantity and all in the same block.
Let's talk about the FA Cup draw. Like you said already, Stu, I guess a significant amount of people will listen to this after it's been made. Before we talk about the FA Cup draw, Stu, can I just cross live to you in Qatar? What can you tell us? What's going on?
It's still 3-3. Cameroon, Serbia, 83 minutes played. And it looks like Serbia have just flashed one through the box. So we've got ourselves, after a string of 0-0 draws in this World Cup, looks like we've got ourselves a bona fide group classic.
And thank you for following this bona fide group classic hours later live with us. FA Cup draw, another thing that you probably already know the outcome of by the time you're listening to this. I think we all know that the ties that are in there that Ipswich could get, and the ones that are mouth-watering. There's trips to Premier League, big Premier League teams having a giant at Portman Road. There's the carrot of playing Norwich. But before we get onto a prediction, let's all make a little definite prediction. What do you want? What one tie do you want? Ross. Where do you want to go? Who do you want to come to Portman Road? Is there a ground you've never been to but want to go to take some pictures? What do you want?
Got to be Spurs, isn't it? Spurs away, the new £1 billion stadium, whatever it is. A Premier League club away, always good. And then, of course, the obvious one, Norwich at home, because, yeah, it'd be a good little test. Or just the Championship side at home, just to test ourselves against one of those sides. But, yeah, obvious one would be Norwich, but, a Premier League team just to switch up.
I'm bang up for Norwich at home. I think the time is now for Ipswich to kind of a nice little sweet spot of the club being in a really, really good place. The fans would absolutely pack it. Ipswich would be the League One club. Norwich would be the favourites at the top end of the Championship. Ipswich, nothing to lose, everything to gain. And I think they could genuinely do something in a game like that. It would be brilliant just to show how far Ipswich have come. For me, I'd love that. Is there anything that's pulling at your heartstrings?
Do you mean pack it as in pack the stadium rather than packing it in terms of showing signs of nerves? Is that a phrase that you'd have used?
I've never heard that.
Absolutely packing it.
Never heard that before.
Okay.
Is that an Essex thing?
I don't know.
Have you made it up? Have you actually ever heard that before?
As always, when I say these things and you all look at me blankly, I start to wonder if it is even a thing. But yeah, we'll move on from that. Packing it, as in packing your pants, as in.
I've heard another expression used for that.
What is it? Bricking it.
Yeah,
that'd be the same sort of thing. Yeah,
I've never heard. I like it though. I've widened my.
I'm now questioning whether I've just made it up.
It'll catch on.
Norwich would be great, wouldn't it? What an occasion! The place would be absolutely bouncing. I'd definitely want that at Portman Road rather than Carrow Road if that fixture was to happen. I'd written something similar to what Ross has just said a few weeks ago when in the early rounds of the FA Cup about a potential Championship match would be a real indication of how far Ipswich have come, how ready they may or may not be for promotion next season. But then you made a good point when we were chatting about it, Andy, is that it probably wouldn't be that because a Championship club would probably make the 10, 11 changes that we're accustomed to seeing in this. So it wouldn't be that. The likelihood it would be Ipswich would get like Hull away and play Hull's reserves or something. And that's not good, is it?
Yeah, it wouldn't be for me. I like the idea of that though. Like if somebody like, I don't know, Luton, obviously Nathan Jones has left now, but played their first team and Ipswich played them, and that would be really interesting. But I think you'd probably see whichever ground that was played at, you'd probably see from the attendance. So there wasn't a particularly exciting one. But anywhere else you particularly want to go to? Goodison obviously would be a bit of a one for you.
Yeah, that's a personal one for me. Everton, I think I've said on here, is my club growing up. They're the team I support, so that would be a nice box ticked for me. But yeah, any of the sort of the bigger stadiums really. Manchester United would obviously hold a fair amount of intrigue with McKenna and Pert, and going back there. It was a bit of a wry smile from him when the prospect of that was raised post-match yesterday, and he sort of said, yeah, maybe we'll save that one to the semis, and then corrected himself that, it would have to be the quarters actually because the semis are at Wembley. But it's a balancing act between getting that big tie early and generating some excitement, or maybe getting something that's winnable. I'll make my little prediction now. Boreham Wood, a hat trick of non-league teams.
Where's that game? Which order are those balls coming out?
It'll be at Portman Road again.
And a nice little passage to round 4, you'd hope.
All the Bs as well.
Bracknell, Buxton, Boreham Wood, Barnsley, Burnley, Blackburn, and then they beat Bristol City in the final. And the FA Cup is Ipswich Town's.
Done.
There we are. Ross, come on then. What's it definitely going to be, Ross? What are you?
I'm gonna do 2 here, if that's allowed.
Well, it's not really.
It's just like when we ask you for a score prediction, you say it could be a win or it could be a draw.
Yeah. Now I'm doing the best case scenario in terms of prediction, and then the worst case scenario. So the worst case, Hartlepool United away. That would be horrible, but winnable. But my main prediction is, I don't know why, I have a feeling we're gonna get Reading away, which doesn't sound great.
That's worse than Hartlepool.
I don't know why. I know. I don't know. I just feel like
I'd take Hartlepool over. Like, my great fear is it will be Accrington away or something. We've been to Accrington too many times. Like, it's a lovely people up there. It's always a nice warm welcome. But I've done Accrington enough times now in the last few years. What are we up to? 5?
Stuart, didn't we work out that I think we'd spent 0.8% of our lives either driving to or from Accrington together, something like that. Or 0.8% of the year or something. It was too much, basically.
Yeah.
Never again.
I like the idea that people are listening to this after the draw has been made and Ipswich are at Accrington and they're just chuckling along.
Still be fun though. So
yeah.
If that indeed is the case, we're bang up for the cup and it's a winnable game and hopefully Town can reach round 4. My crystal ball tells me Middlesbrough away was the one that I landed on, which would have some level of intrigue on it because it's Michael Carrick, close friend of and former colleague of Kieran McKenna. But that's what my ultimately not a particularly exciting
bit
game.
Of Chesterfield, bit of Paul Cook intrigue.
I mean, I would be bang up for either that or the Grimsby game. A winnable match, a very winnable match, either of those, but packed with narrative as well. Plenty to get the teeth into if that would happen. And you'd hope a route through to round 4. So I wouldn't be against that. But we'll see. I guess half of the people listening will know what's happened by the time they listen and we might look very, very silly. Right, we're going to finish up now. But Stu, I need one more update from Qatar from you just before we to complete this watch along.
We're into stoppage time here now. Cameroon versus Serbia. 92 minutes on the clock. 4 more allotted minutes of injury time to play. Both teams going for this now, not settling for the draw. We'll see if I can bring you a goal before we wrap up.
Still don't know what this means for the group, do we? Doesn't matter. It's just a watch along. Right, you've not got long to bring this goal. Ross, you got any other business?
I just want to let everyone know that I didn't get wet yesterday. It was, of course, another thing. Part of the game was there was a lot of rain, and some wet players out there. So luckily, I stayed under the covering of the cobbled because that was empty, wasn't it? So that was my neck of the woods for the game, and I was in good old Bono's seat, roofing U2 in the second half because I just decided to sit there. So that's really it, to be honest. That's nice. Also, I want to mention Matt Ward, who made his debut for the club as well. I thought he came on, and number 41, Andy, big numbers coming out. But yeah, I thought he did okay.
That is what it is. When you've got young players, that's fine. It's if he's stuck with that for the majority of his senior career. Right, you've not got long, Stu. All you've got is for me to say thank you to our sponsors, Manscaped, long-standing sponsor, and Ginger Pickle, new sponsor. Who Ross? What's their catchphrase again? Ginger Pickle. Have you got one?
If you're in a pickle,
Cool Hawk Express.
Yeah.
Pickle.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like pickles. Do you like pickles? I don't like pickles.
I believe it was if you like your ginger, if you like your pickled ginger, cool Ginger Pickle, something along those lines.
Yeah, I would suggest probably going on their website rather than taking our word for it. And I would thoroughly suggest. It's actually a really good website. It's very ginger. It's very pickly. It's gingerpicklemarketing.com. So go on there. I'm filling time now, Stu. You're not going to bring me a goal, are you? But
Well, if you stay with me, Andy, it's 94 minutes on the clock. Cameroon have just got a free kick in a wide left area. Everyone's up. I'm hoping the goalkeeper will join them.
this would be so good if you brought us a goal.
Finish.
Stu.
They've cut to the Cameroon fans in the crowd. They've got some prayer beads there, looking pensive, waving their flags. No goalkeeper in the box. That's a shame. Oh, straight into the goalkeeper's arms. That's a shame. What a flat moment to end on. Just wrap it up.
I feel like we're in no man's land here because there's 2 minutes left. If we wrap up now and there is a goal in this game.
Have you mentioned Manscaped?
Yeah, I could mention them again if you want.
David Earl was quite excited to be that his pod with us was sponsored by Manscaped, wasn't he?
Yeah,
enjoyed that.
Very committed manscaper, he says. Very committed to what it wasn't so bothered about Ginger Pickle, actually. I think it was a bit local for him. Oh.
Serbia shot from downtown, patted down by the goalkeeper. They're both going for this. 95, 1 minute to go.
This is terrible podcasting, isn't it? But I feel really tense. If we could somehow bring a World Cup goal live on the pod, would be breaking new ground. I love Cameroon's kit. Green shirts, red shorts, yellow socks.
I'm a strong believer that all the best football kits, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is your area of expertise, the best football kits are when the shirt, shorts and socks are all a different colour. France,
very good for that.
Exactly.
Yeah, very strong.
Especially for international teams.
Yeah, very, very strong. These Cameroon kits are nice. I might have to... I haven't got a World Cup shirt from this year. The one that they haven't worn it yet. I don't think they're going to wear it. It's Japan. Japan have got this kind of white and pink and purpley blue kind of away shirt. With like flower petals, it looks like, design on the sleeve. I really, really like that.
Like cherry blossom.
Yeah, exactly like that from Kyoto. Anything going on, Stu?
The allotted time is up. We're at the referee's discretion now. 96 has just passed, and that's it. He's blown the whistle. The players from both teams sink to the turf. They've given it their all. A World Cup classic has finished 3 apiece.
And thank you so much for following it with us 3 hours later. We've been Andy, Ross, and Stu, and we'll be back later in the week for another World Cup watch along, maybe. We'll see. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.